Hello and welcome to the Alabama Public Health Training Network. Thank you for joining us today. Well, hey, I'm Ken Harrison.
My name is Elena Robinson.
And we're with the Alabama Department of Public Health. And today we'd like to share with you our stay interview toolkit and our stay interview process. But first we'd like to begin by asking you a couple of questions. And if you'd like to participate in the survey, you can either scan the QR code or you can go to slido.com and enter code ADPH, standing for Alabama Department of Public Health. And the question is, what is your department's most successful retention strategy? What is your department's most successful retention strategy? And if you're responding to the question, then you're going to be able to see everybody's responses. But if you're not, all you're going to be able to see is this screen. But don't worry about that. That's okay. I'll read off the responses. All right, they're starting to come in. We have community outreach, state retirement, merit raises, opportunities for growth and promotion, increased pay, forming relationships and talking to persons regularly. Wow, good one. Flexibility, autonomy and job satisfaction, holidays, grace days. Still have some coming in. I think the most successful strategy is communication and making people feel valued. Praise and recognition, benefits, creating a career ladder. Wow. Retirement, increased pay, health insurance benefits, leave time accumulation, defined benefit retirement, great work environment, remote work, retirement and merit raises, job satisfaction, plans for promotion, getting to know the employee, have approachable person to ask question at a resource, treat them with respect and reward, merit raises, no micromanagement, communication, praise, benefit and merit raises. Couple more moments. We might have one or two more coming in. Communication and benefit. We see a lot about communication, a lot about talking with employees, keeping them informed. A lot of great strategies here. And one of the key points is, I think as organizations, we're continuously looking for ways to improve the work experience for our employees. I do have one more question right after this, and you don't have to rescan the QR code. This should populate. Has a high-performing employee ever left unexpectedly? And you have four options: never, rarely, occasionally, and too often. We have a lot of comments, and this is going to be, you're going to see the responses as a percentage, and I'll also read off the responses once we get to a point where it looks like we've had quite a bit of people responding. Has a high-performing employee ever left unexpectedly? All right, so I'm just going to cut it off right here, but right now we have occasionally leading the pack at 44%, rarely 26%, and too often at 26% as well, never at 5%. Sometimes we do have employees that just might blindside us. Employees we might feel that were very content with their job, and we get our feedback from maybe an exit interview, and we're really blindsided by that. But thank you so much for participating in our survey, and we have a couple more today, so we'll get to those here in just a little bit. But Elena and I had the opportunity to attend the Public Health Infrastructure Grants Reverse Site meeting this past year. I attended in person and Elena attended virtually. And we had many takeaways. But one of the items or topics that really resonated with us and one that we really wanted to explore was the stay interview. Now, currently we have an exit interview, and exit interviews provide a lot of useful information. But in the exit interview, at that point, the employee has already left the department. Exit interviews are reactive in nature, whereas a stay interview is proactive. A stay interview helps us learn or understand why an employee wants to stay with the department, why might they want to leave, and also what can the department do to create opportunities to retain employees. If an employee feels valued and appreciated, they're more likely to stay. So one of the first steps that we wanted to take was to identify our stakeholders. So we selected our chief of staff, our deputy chief of staff, personnel from human resources, employee relations, workforce development. We also wanted to include members from our pilot group, and our members from our pilot group have really been able to give us just invaluable insight and feedback along the way. And our state partners act as thought partners and guide us along the process and ensure the success of the stay interview process. And we meet on an as-needed basis. So what is a stay interview? A stay interview is a structured conversation between our interview team and the employee. And it's intended to help the department understand why an employee wants to stay, and also what can the department do to improve the work experience for the employee. It's a proactive approach. We want to make sure we're having a conversation with an employee before they make the decision to leave the department. And also a stay interview that ADPH, we refer to it as a process because the interview itself is just the first step. And this is just going to be a quick overview of our process. We'll get into each one of these items in more detail in just a little bit. But the first thing we do, we send the questionnaire out to the employee, and we do this prior to the interview. And we do that because we want the employee to have ample time to be able to review the questions and put a lot of thought into their responses. Then we conduct the interview, and that's where the rubber meets the road, of course. And after the interview, the interview team will get together and we're going to review the employee's responses, and we're going to group those responses into what we call themes. And don't worry about knowing what a theme is. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. Then a member from Workforce Development will meet with the supervisor, and they're going to go through this theme checklist, and they're going to also talk about expectations moving forward. And finally, the supervisor is going to work with that employee, and they're going to build their stay plan. And throughout the year, Workforce Development will have quarterly check-ins with the supervisor, and that's to keep communication open and also to ensure that that stay plan is effective. And before we talk about what a stay plan is, we want to make sure we understand what a stay interview is and what it's not. A stay interview is a tool to understand the employee experience, but of course, it's not an excuse for the employee to complain. The stay interview is a resource to help supervisors be better leaders, better supervisors, and it's not a way to identify problems and issues with the supervisor. And it's a first step to a larger conversation. And of course, it's not the only way to improve the work experience. We have many ways, including our training report and our professional development plan.
So now that we've talked about what a stay interview is and what it isn't, let's talk about the stay plan. So the stay plan is an output of the stay interview, and it is an actionable document. So this is where the employee will identify needs that they have in the workplace, and the supervisor and the employee can work together to address those needs by coming up with solutions or a list of action items. But the stay plan isn't just about the what. We're also concerned with the when, the why, and the how. So if you'll look at the blank stay the blank stay plan template, you'll see that there is an activities row on the top and an outcomes row on the bottom, and each is divided into 4 steps. So for the activities, step 1 is to identify what that need is. Step 2 is to develop a solution. Step 3 is to set a target date. And then in step 4, you assess how well that solution is working. And then when you come down to the outcomes row, you want to identify what will addressing those needs accomplish for the employee. You also want to know how well the action was implemented in step 2. In step 3, were you able to achieve your target date or not? And then in step 4, we're not only concerned about whether the solution is working to meet the need, we also want to know if the activities were successful in improving motivation or employee engagement, job satisfaction. So now I've got a question for you all, and if you are participating already with the QR code, it should already update to this new question and you can complete the poll. Otherwise, go to slido.com and enter the code ADPH. But the question is, an employee has indicated more feedback from supervisors would be helpful. Which of the following proposed goals follows the SMART model? And that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. See, the answers are still coming in here. Okay, so it looks like most people, 91% of people, responded with what is the correct answer of these answer choices, and that is that the supervisor will schedule monthly meetings to address the work done. So this is something specific that the supervisor can do. We can assess whether or not it's been done. We know how often it's going to be done, so the time-bound element of it, and also it's relevant to what the employee is asking for, unlike our donuts response there at the bottom.
I don't know, I like the donut.
I'm sure that employee would too, but probably not to meet their need. But more on the stay plan. So this is a collaboration between the supervisor and the employee to ensure that the stay plan is going to work for both of them and be relevant for both parties as they work towards a common goal. So why is the stay interview process important? First, a lot of our day is spent at work, so a poor work environment can negatively impact your satisfaction, and building that supportive relationship between the employee and the supervisor can really go a long way. It's also important to increase job satisfaction, and we know that job satisfaction is a top reason for employee retention. Your employees are probably going to feel more engaged. They'll feel more motivated to complete their work, which is going to encourage them to perform better, so better performance. Another reason this is important is because turnover is costly, and not just a financial cost. When somebody leaves your department, other staff can be overburdened with extra work, which might affect their job satisfaction, their morale, and their engagement. And by addressing all of these things in the work environment and making sure that it works for both the employee and the supervisor, we can work to improve our retention rate. So now I just want to give some results from the Public Health Workforce Interest and Needs Survey. This was from 2024. And I'm just going to give a few of the results here and just kind of give context as to why the stay interview process is so important. So according to PHWINS 2024, 54% of staff have 0 to 5 years with their agency, and 72% are non-supervisors. So this is really a great opportunity for us to learn about what employees want and what's going to help them to stay with your department. We also learned from PHWINS that 21% of staff are planning on leaving in a year. And some of the reasons for leaving include pay, job satisfaction, lack of opportunities for advancement, work overload or burnout, and organizational culture. And then some of the reasons for staying are benefits, job stability, satisfaction with the supervisor, support and job satisfaction. And in our stay interview, we do address a number of these different, what we call stay and leave factors. A little bit more from PH Wins here. 83% of staff state that their mental health is good, very good, or excellent. And at the same time, 51% have one or more symptoms of burnout that come and go, and 57% take on responsibilities outside their job description. And again, our stay interview questionnaire, which we're about to dive into, explores some of these topics.
Okay, this is our stay interview toolkit, and for those of you that are joining by broadcast, this should be posted along with your slide deck, so you might want to take a moment to go ahead and open this up so you can follow along. But our stay interview toolkit, it serves as a guide to facilitate the process from start to finish. And by the conclusion of the stay interview toolkit, both the supervisor and the employee should be able to identify the importance of stay interviews and stay plans. We don't want our employees to feel like their feedback and their concerns go unheard. Instead, we want to let them know that we truly listen to them and that we also care enough to demonstrate follow-up. The toolkit also helps us learn how stay interviews can positively impact employee retention. We learn things such as what motivates our employees, what's important to them, how to better engage them, how to reduce frustrations. The toolkit also helps us understand best practices for conducting interviews and developing stay plans. And we're continuously learning and we're sharing what we learn. So this is the criteria that we look at when we select employees that are eligible for a stay interview. And we do recommend selecting your high-performing employee, those that you want to learn more about, those that you want to retain. So at ADPH, we require that an employee has to be employed with the department for a minimum of 2 years. On their last performance appraisal, they had to have been rated a meet standards or above on all of their responsibility and result statements. That's what we call their job duties. And we also rate employees on work habits, and we have 4: attendance, punctuality, cooperation with coworkers, and compliance with rules. And we either rate our employees as satisfactory or unsatisfactory, and they had to have been rated as satisfactory on all 4. And lastly, an employee cannot have any counseling or discipline within the last 12 months. Now, in most situations, the supervisor will have multiple employees that meet these qualifications. And in that case, we just make a random selection. But this is a really important part to understand for our supervisors and especially the employees. All because they're not selected for the stay interview does not mean they can't have this conversation with their supervisors. Matter of fact, we encourage it. And we also want both the employee and the supervisor. It's really important for both of them to be invested in this process. So once we drafted our stay interview toolkit, we conducted a pilot with one of our programs. And in the pilot, we were looking for insight and feedback on things such as the interview itself and also on the clarity of the questions that we asked. We got a lot of great feedback. We received feedback from those that were being interviewed, also from the interview team, and we also had someone in the interviews observing the whole process. And we conducted 3 stay interviews, and we developed 2 stay plans. And we learned quite a bit from our pilot, and we're continuing to learn from it because we're in the process now going through the quarterly check-ins with the stay plan. So now we're going to look a little closer at all of the steps of our process. And to begin with, we're going to look at the questionnaire and the interview. So our stay interview is made up of 13 questions. And when we developed those 13 questions, we looked at many resources. And one of the first resources we looked at was the Louisiana Department of Health. They had a question bank in their stay interview toolkit. We looked at that. We also pulled information from our own exit interviews. We had a lot of key indicators we looked at. Then we also took out a TA request to help guide us in developing questions. So with the combination of all of those and thoughts and idea from our stakeholders, we were able to develop our own 13 questions. Now we have an interview team, and our interview team is made up of members of workforce development. And we chose to go with the interview team because we wanted consistency in the way the questions that were asked. We also wanted to create an environment that was comfortable to the employee. We felt that if it was the supervisor asking the questions, then the employee might not be as open to provide the responses that they wanted to. And we also wanted to take some burden off of the supervisor. Now, we recommend scheduling up to an hour for each interview, and that might seem like a long time, but weighing that how it is compared to losing an employee, it way outweighs the difference. Just wanted to also point out the interview team that's on the slide. That's not us. That's just clip artwork. We're a whole lot better looking than they are. Why the laughing? Okay, so these are our 13 questions. And the first question, we really wanted to hit on the department's core values. And here we wanted to get a sense how the employee aligns with the department's core value, how they feel they contribute to the broader picture. So we asked the question, ADPH's core values are excellence, integrity, innovation, and community. Which of the department's values resonates most with you, and why? And question number 2, sometimes job duties and job expectations might not be what the employee thought they were going to be, and that can lead to dissatisfaction in the job. So that's why we ask question number 2. Do your day-to-day duties and work contributions meet your original expectations of your job position? Question number 3. Here we want to learn if the employee feels that their work makes a difference, if they feel valued for the work they do. So we ask, do you feel your work contributions make an impact? Do you feel your coworkers think your contributions make a difference? And question number 4, here we want to learn what motivates our employees. Not all employees are motivated the same way. Some employees are motivated intrinsically, others extrinsically. We want to motivate an employee on how it's best for them. So that's why we ask, what motivates you to do your best work? How does ADPH support these motivators? Question number 5 reads, what have you felt proud about accomplishing in your job? And we have a follow-up to question number 5. And the follow-up is, how much do you feel recognized for those accomplishments? How would you suggest accomplishments are recognized? Now, this question really gets at how the employee would like to be recognized for for a job well done. And it doesn't have to be a big recognition. It can be something as simple as a thank you, or maybe it's just a quick shout out. Question number 6, it says about work environment, and it reads, what factors contribute positively to your work environment? What factors create challenges in the work environment? This also has a follow-up to it, and the follow-up is, do you have support overcoming those challenges? Very important. Question number 7, this is one of my favorite questions. Here we want to understand what's causing people to consider leaving. And this lets them know that we listen to them and that we value them. And the question is, have you ever thought about leaving ADPH? What prompted it? And I also like question 8 a lot. I like all the questions, actually. So question number 8, what would lead to you looking at opportunities outside of ADPH? What's the single most meaningful action that could be taken to address this? And this is particularly helpful for those employees that seem content with their job, that have never thought of looking for another job. And this helps the department be proactive to prevent situations like this. Question number 9. Now, this couldn't be a stay interview without a question about work-life balance, right? So we ask, how do the demands of your job impact your personal life? Question number 10 has to do with career opportunities and professional development. Do you feel like you can advance your career here? If you want, why or why not? Question 11 has to do with the work experience. What could the department do to improve your work experience? So this is interesting because a lot of employees feel like they have a really good work experience, but this lets them know that we truly value them, that we want to see what we can do to even expand on it more. I also really like question number 12 because it has to do with professional development. And to me, this is about building trust between the supervisor and the employee. If the employee feels like the supervisor is truly invested in them, then they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more dedicated. So we ask, what is one thing your supervisor can do to further your professional development? And finally, question 13, is there anything else you want to share with me today? And this is really anything else that has not been covered. Those are 13 questions. So now I want to ask you a question. And I'm going to test your memory. Just kidding. Just all you need to do is respond with the topic. But the question is, what questions from the previous slides would be especially useful to ask your team? Again, if you've been responding, this should just automatically populate on your phone. What questions from the previous slides would be especially useful to ask your team? We'll give it a couple more moments. Do you feel supported? Yes. Very good. Thank you. What have you felt proud about accomplishing? I really like that too. What could your supervisor do to help you? Yes, that's about professional development. Number 7, about leaving the department. 11, 12, and 9. Those are 3 of my favorites. What would lead you to look at opportunities outside of ADP? What's the single most meaningful action that could be done to address this? Questions 8 and 11, 2 and 6. Questions related to seeking opportunities outside of ADPH and the employee and looking for opportunities. What factors can create challenges? Professional development. Do you feel work contributions make an impact? What motivates you to do your best? Have you thought about leaving? Do you feel supported? What motivates you? Question number 4, have you ever thought about leaving and what prompted it? What can your supervisor do to help you? Questions 8, 9, another one for 8. Do you feel supported? What makes you want to leave? 8, 10, 13, 12, 8. A lot of them like 8, like me. Is there anything else you want to share with me today? That's great. We want to leave it open to the employee because we might have missed something that would really help us be proactive to helping them stay. And it's just several of them. Donuts. That was important to me. I need to talk to my supervisor about that. Donuts every morning. Can you advance your career here if you want? And what can I do to improve your work experience? What do you enjoy most about work in here in question number 4? I might have skipped a couple. Everything was moving pretty quickly. There were quite a bit. And I'll read one more. Motivated by being independent and trusted to get the job done without micromanagement. I tell you what, thank you so much for your response. And I just want to, when we conducted our pilot, we had 13 original questions. And after our pilot, based on the feedback from everybody, those we interviewed and those doing the interview and the person observing, we did end up rephrasing 2 or 3 of the questions. And I really feel like we have some great questions now, but, it is a work in process. So, 6 months from now, a year from now, our questions might look a little different. But right now, we feel it's real impactful, and we're always looking to find out great new ideas. So we always like looking at everybody else's toolkits. But if you do have questions that you think that would be impactful or that might work for you, please make sure you share it with us. And you have our contact information, our emails. If you are joining by broadcast, it's on the Stay Interview Toolkit or the slide deck. But if not, just reach out to us and we'll be glad to respond with any questions you can have. And I'm going to give it back to Elena.
All right. So now that we have reviewed the questions in the toolkit, let's talk about actually conducting the interview and the debrief that goes on after that. So as Ken has mentioned, the interview team are the ones who conduct the interview with the employee. And he mentioned themes a little bit earlier. So what we do is we provide the interview team with a fillable form that's split into different themes, and each of the questions that he just read off maps to one of those themes. And we categorize them into positive stay factors, so those things that would encourage an employee to stay with the department, and opportunity factors, so what areas can we improve on to make a better work experience for the employee. There's also a small note section at the bottom of the themes checklist for anything that comes up in the interview that isn't captured by one of the questions. So what the interview team will do is that they'll go through those different answers that they receive from the employee, and they'll check if clear job expectations was a stay factor for that employee, they'll check that box. If career advancement was an opportunity factor for an employee, they'll check that box. And as you can see, these themes are worded pretty similarly. They're just a little bit more neutrally worded in the opportunity factors box. So instead of clear job expectations, we just have job expectations as an opportunity factor. And instead of good work-life balance like we have in positive stay factors, we just have the work-life balance as an opportunity factor in the other box. It's very important for the workforce development team to check with the employee before sending this checklist to their supervisor, because we want to make sure that we're not communicating anything that would be uncomfortable for the employee, and we want to make sure that we're accurate as well. So that's definitely something that we learned during our pilot as well. Another thing that we learned from the pilot is that providing, in addition to providing the checklist, another thing that we can do is, excuse me, we've moved on to the next step, I apologize. We're meeting with the supervisor now. So now the workforce development team will meet with the supervisor to provide this themes checklist and provide them with next steps as far as creating the stay plan. So in addition to providing the themes checklist, we learned that we also should provide the supervisor with some dialogue to kind of get a little bit deeper into what the employee's concerns are, and also some questions that they might be able to ask so that they can develop an effective and useful stay plan together. So some sample dialogue that we've come up with is, to better understand and assist you based on your feedback, I'd like for you to tell me more about the stay factors. I also have some thoughtful, open-ended questions I'd like to ask you in each of the areas where we have opportunity for growth and improvement. So we're hoping to create this toolkit for supervisors that has dialogue like this, and also questions that they can ask their employee. So say, for instance, your employee checked that positive impact was a stay factor for them. So the supervisor, to learn more about that, could ask, in what ways do you feel your work makes a difference? Or are there ways we can help you see the impact of your work more clearly? If the employee checks that work environment is an opportunity factor, the supervisor could ask, what aspects of the physical or social environment hinder your work? And what changes could improve your daily experience at work? And as we continue through our pilot and do even more pilots and collect more data from interviews, we're hoping to also, in this toolkit, supply supervisors with a list of solutions for common problems or needs that come up from employees, so that we can take a little bit of the effort off of them as far as building this stay plan. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what that interview or what that stay plan looks like. So the supervisor and the employee get together to create this stay plan. And I'll remind you of what that looks like. So again, we have the activities row, the outcomes row, and they're divided into those 4 steps. And the stay plan is going to be completed at different time points. So all of this is not going to be completed in that initial sit down with the supervisor and the employee, because some of it asks about how well the solution is working. So if you haven't actually implemented the solution yet, you're not going to be able to answer that question. And that's where the check-ins, the quarterly check-ins come in, so we can get updates as to how things are progressing. And again, we want our goals to be SMART, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So in the next 4 slides, we have examples from our pilot group of how an employee and supervisor might work together to complete part of this stay plan. So say you've got an employee who indicates that their work environment is an opportunity factor. This is someone who thinks that their work environment is distracting and they can have better focus with more quiet. So what's going to be accomplished by meeting this need? Why is this important? So this employee will have increased higher quality output because they have more time to actually work on their work and put more effort into it. It's also going to reduce their stress because they know that they can get this done in the time that they've got allotted to get it done. Also, it's going to improve their confidence and their mastery in whatever the subject matter is that they work on. So what are actions that could be considered or that can be taken in order to address this need of this distracting work environment? So one thing that was brought up was having a do not disturb sign that this employee could put outside of their cubicle or outside of their office space so that people know that, hey, I don't need to be interrupted right now. I'm kind of busy working on something. Another thing that was discussed was flexible work hours. So if this employee finds that maybe it's quieter in the morning time before people really start getting in and they want to come in a little bit earlier and maybe leave a little bit earlier that day or a couple days a week, that was another option that was discussed for this employee. In our next example, an employee identified professional development opportunities as an opportunity factor. So this employee also wants to be promoted in the future. So what will be accomplished by meeting this need of having professional development opportunities? Smooth job role transition, and also better efficiency and productivity because they'll have the tools that they need in order to perform better in that new role. So actions that can be taken to accomplish this, things that were considered were a continuity of operations plan, and also just researching and attending different job-specific trainings so they have the tools they need to perfect their craft and perform well in their role. Now, you might find that some employees have opportunity factors that are not necessarily specific to them, but are more broadly applicable to their program. And that's the case for these next two examples. So in this particular instance, the employee wanted more communication in the program. And the reason for this, or the reason why we want to meet this need, is because it would increase awareness about what people are accomplishing and getting done in their job roles. And it also gives an opportunity for staff to know that their work is appreciated and valued. You get a chance to share what you're doing and then receive that feedback from your colleagues. So an action that could be taken to address this is having quarterly staff meetings to provide updates on others' projects. And in the final example on this, an opportunity factor was recognition and rewards. And what will be accomplished by meeting this need is that you boost morale and you encourage team building. And the action that can be taken is that you simply just recognize your staff for going above and beyond. And this is going to be specific, of course, to the employee, how they would like to be recognized. But this is the solution that had come up in one of the pilot groups. So now we're going to just review the process one more time, just to recap what we've already gone through. So you send the questionnaire to the employee and schedule that interview. And as Ken stated, it's important to send the questionnaire before the interview so that the employee has some time to actually give some thoughtful feedback and responses to the questions. And then in the next step, the interview team will actually conduct that interview, and then after the interview is over, they get together to debrief by putting those different responses into those themes checklists that they can then provide to the supervisor. So someone on the workforce development team in step number 3 will meet with the supervisor to provide that themes checklist for that particular employee, and hopefully we'll have a supervisor toolkit ready soon that they could also provide that will give them some further guidance. And this person will also explain to the supervisor how to create that stay plan. And then in the final step, the supervisor meets with the employee to actually develop the stay plan, to actually meet the needs that came up in the initial interview. So here are some key lessons that we learned from conducting our pilot. First, having a consistent interview team is ideal, and this is just to make sure that your employees feel comfortable sharing information, and also to make sure the questions are asked consistently and that the interviewers are engaged and really invested in the process. Another lesson that we learned is that allowing the employee to review that themes checklist before sending it to the supervisor is very important. As I stated, you just want to make sure that you're accurate and that nothing is being shared that they wouldn't be comfortable sharing with the supervisor. And then another key lesson is that having that one-on-one meeting with the supervisor, so having someone from the workforce development team actually sit down with the supervisor instead of making a phone call or instead of sending that email, just actually sit down with them and tell them, this is your themes checklist, explain to them what the themes are, what are your stay factors, what are your opportunity factors, and then here's a toolkit to kind of help you probe a little bit deeper into some of these needs, and here's the stay plan. Well, do you have any questions about it? How do you fill it out? I'll be checking in quarterly. Things like that would occur in that one-on-one meeting. So now we have one final question for you guys. What are your key takeaways about the stay interview process? Proactive. Yes, definitely proactive. Like we said, the exit interviews do give us a lot of information, but at that point, the employee's already left the department, so it's definitely a proactive approach to retaining employees. Retention is something to work on. It's an important tool. It can help employees who may not feel valued in their job. Well thought out plan for implementation. Great job, team. It's a good idea. Collaboration, have an interview team. And yeah, that is something that we do a little bit differently just from the research that I've done with other departments. A lot of times that interview is between the supervisor and the employee, or someone in HR and the employee. So that is something we did a little bit differently. Keeping open communication is important. Listen and take action. Employees want to be heard and know that their opinions and suggestions matter. Very useful tool, very proactive, showing them that they are valued, improve work environment, facilitates communication, exactly. We definitely want to make sure that we build that relationship between the supervisor and the employee so that they feel comfortable communicating. Consistent interview team. Retain valuable employees by showing we care. There's concern with retention. The department is actively looking to better the working experience. Work environment, employee satisfaction improvement strategies. Looks like y'all got some really good takeaways from this program. I'm excited to see some of those answers. It's scrolling kind of fast, so I wasn't able to read all of them, but thank you all for your feedback here. Employees feel valued. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So let's talk about how we're going to expand the project. So we are a large department, and this project is already getting a lot of interest just by people talking about it. And like we've stated, we only have 3 people on our interview team, and we can't be everywhere, across the whole state. So, and one thing that we've talked about in our stakeholder meetings is having virtual interviews, so doing it virtually. And I know that's not ideal, but it is something that we're considering. And another thing that we've brought up in our stakeholder meetings is having people volunteer to be interviewers, somebody outside of the employee supervisory chain, so we can get more people involved and hopefully get through more interviews and create more action plans. So some of our future directions, as we do get more interest in this project, we do want to build a survey to capture those people who are interested. And of course, it'll have the eligibility criteria that Ken read off a little bit earlier. And it'll also be a way for us to wait list people. So if we get too much interest and we just don't have the capacity to do all those interviews, it would give us an opportunity to wait list employees as well. And like I mentioned before, that supervisor toolkit is really going to be critical. Having that dialogue and those questions to probe deeper into employees' needs, and of course also having solutions. So as we conduct more of these interviews, just learning what are the common things that are coming up and how can we address them. We also want to present this to our leadership, so to our directors and administrators here at the Alabama Department of Public Health, just to get more buy-in and more participation in this project as well, and to just make this a more department-wide tool. And lastly, we want to develop a stay interview or succession planning training. So we thank y'all for listening today and for your time. If you have any questions for Ken or myself, here's our emails on the screen there. Ken's is kenneth.harrison@adph.state.al.us. And I'm Elena, ALAINA.Robinson@adph.state.al.us. And lastly, I just wanted to leave you with some resources and references that we use to build this toolkit and also to build this presentation and to inform our stay interview process. Now, we've asked you guys a lot of questions. Do you have any questions for us?
So there's still maybe time to submit a few, but in the meantime, we do have a few questions. First question, do specific answers to the interview questions get discussed with the supervisor?
No, they don't. So the person on the workforce development team who meets with the supervisor is not involved in the interview at all. So they're not present during the interview, and they don't discuss with the interview team what's being said in that interview. So that person is more objective when they meet with the supervisor. So they can just provide that themes checklist, and even if the supervisor has questions about what's on the checklist, they don't really have any context to provide any sort of specific answers that may have been provided.
Thank you. Next question that we got is, what skills do the interview team have to prepare them for this role?
Well, great question. Actually, several different things. First of all of our interview team are members of our stakeholders. So they took part in developing the questions that we asked. They also took part in the pilot where we learned a lot. We learned about the clarity of the questions. We ended up rephrasing. But also, all the members on the interview team are also trainers, and they wrote the department's interview and selection guide, and they also train all of our supervisors in the interview process, so they're well versed in interviews.
Our next question, should this phase out any of our other retention strategies?
No, this is in addition. I think that we're continuously learning. I think everybody is, and there's I think we are being proactive ourselves and not only adding this, but continuing what is working well and still continuing to explore different ideas.
All right. I'm not seeing any other new ones come in, so this should be the last one. Do you have any plans to report more broadly on the results of this process as more teams conduct stay interviews?
I can answer that. Yeah, so the more interviews that we conduct and the more data we collect, we do expect that we're going to find some common themes and some needs that probably come up among multiple employees in multiple different programs. And so we do want to share those common themes with our leadership so that we can make an impact on our department at a department level and not just a program level. So that is something that we want to share with leadership so that we can improve our department's retention as a whole.
Well, that's all the questions that we have.
Well, we just want to take a moment to thank everybody for joining us today. And you have our email addresses. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. And this will be posted on demand sometime next week. But thank you again for joining us today, and everybody have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.